Alright, so today we're going to be starting Unit 2 of Life Science, and we're going to be talking about cells during this unit. Now, one other thing about cells is that cells are microscopic. They're tiny. At least most of them are. The largest single cell on the planet is an ostrich egg. Okay? But most cells, and the ones that we're going to be talking about, you cannot see by just looking at them with your eyes. And so we are going to be using microscopes in order to see some different types of cells in this unit. So in order to be able to use the microscope, you got to know what the parts are. So this first part here is about how the microscope works and which part does what. So basic parts of the microscope. Now, this is what's called a compound light microscope. Most of them will have the same general parts, and there'll be some differences in appearance between different microscopes, and based on the manufacturer of the microscope, the ones that we're going to be using in our lab are similar to the one in the picture that have a single eyepiece. So that's what's up here at the top. Sometimes they'll have two eyepieces, so you'll look through them almost like binoculars. All right. Sometimes the lenses move up and down, but the ones that we're going to be using, the stage is going to move up and down. So while all the parts in general are the same, there are some differences in how different manufacturers make their microscopes and how they work. But once you know the basics, you'll be able to pretty much understand any microscope. Now, the body tube is this little section right here. It's in between where you look on the microscope and where all these powerful lenses are. So it is what actually holds that eyepiece and keeps it the proper distance away from the lenses. By keeping the proper distance between the eyepiece, which is a lens, and the objectives, you'll be able to always focus as you need to. All right, then you have what's called the revolving nose piece. This is this disc up here that actually holds all your lenses. Okay, so it's going to hold two or more almost always. The microscopes that we are going to be using in the lab have 3 lenses, like you see on this one. In biology, once you get to 9th grade, your microscopes could have 4 lenses. There are microscopes with 5 of them, but the nose piece is what holds these lenses, and it twists. Okay, that's why we call it a revolving nose piece. And as it twists, you change which of these lenses you're using. So it changes the magnification to make it look bigger and bigger and bigger. The low power objective is the smallest of the lenses. It is the least powerful of these objective lenses. And most of them have a 4 by power. That means it's going to make the image look 4 times bigger than it really is. Now, just this one is 4 times. We'll work with that eyepiece to make it look even bigger. We'll talk about that in a minute. The medium power objective literally magnifies a medium amount. Usually that amount is a 10x, and that's what our microscopes are that we're using in our lab. And then you have the high power objective. That's the biggest of the lenses. Literally, the smallest lens is the least, the biggest lens is the most as far as magnification goes. So it's going to magnify the most. Okay, it's the longest lens. Our microscopes in our lab are going to have a 40x. So that's the most that we're going to be able to magnify something in our labs. Now, in biology, they'll have one that's 100x. So you'll have that 4th lens. But for us, in our science classes, here in 7th grade, you're only going to have the 3. So the biggest one's going to be a 40x. All right. Then you have the stage clips. These are these 2 little silver clips. They pop up and down. They kind of work like alligator clips. All right. And they're going to hold the slide in place. Now, you're not going to use these with a wet mount. You'll know what that is later. You're only going to use these with prepared slides. Once you find what you're looking for on the slide, you use these clips and they pop on top of the slide and hold it in place for you so you don't lose your specimen that you're looking at. The diaphragm is this little lever underneath, down here. All right, and that diaphragm is a rotating disc, and it controls how much light shines up through this little window on the stage. So it controls how much light illuminates your specimen on your slide. Now, we have two different kinds of microscopes in our lab. Some of them have this little lever right here and it slides back and forth. And some of them have an actual disc that have holes in it. And the holes get bigger and bigger and bigger as you go around. So the bigger the hole, the more light is shining through, and you rotate the whole disc. You can kind of think of the diaphragm like a dimmer switch. Okay, if you have a dimmer switch on any of your lights at home, you know, you turn it and it makes the room dim, and you turn it the other way and it makes the room bright. Okay, that's how the diaphragm works for your microscope. It's a dimmer switch. All right, the light source, of course, is what lights up your specimen. It's usually just a light bulb. Okay, it shines up. That's why this is a compound light microscope. It's because it uses actual light to illuminate your specimen on the microscope, and it shines from underneath. That's why you need the diaphragm. Okay, the ocular lens is also called the eyepiece, and it's literally what you look for. This is your ocular part of your body. Eyes, so eyepiece is what you look through. Now it has a 10x or sometimes a 15x. Every microscope that I know of that you will use at GMC has a 10x eyepiece. So this one magnifies things 10 times. And then your objective lenses have their different magnifications, and that's where we get the term compound, because we're using two different lenses in order to make our specimen look bigger. All right, and so that's the one that you're going to look through. All right, the arm is simply kind of a holding, supporting structure. It's literally what attaches all of your lenses, ocular and objective lenses, to the rest of your microscope. It keeps things the proper distance apart. All right, the stage is this big flat platform. The stage is where you set your slide. That's what you're going to put your slide on. It holds the slide. That's where you're going to be working with the slide, is on the stage. Then you have your coarse adjustment knob. Now look closely at this picture. You'll notice that you have this big knob on the outside, and then you have this little knob sitting on top, which is kind of like a wedding cake. All right? The larger of the two knobs, these are actually two different ones. Okay, the larger knob is the coarse adjustment knob. Now that is what you are going to use when you're using low power, little lens, big knob. Okay, always little lens, big knob. All right, you're going to use that. When you turn that big knob, you're going to be able to see the stage move up and down. That's how you're going to find the specimen. You always want to start at the bottom and move it up towards your lenses, and then you'll be able to suddenly, whoop, there's going to be your specimen. It's going to pop into view as you use your coarse adjustment. Okay, so that's what you're going to use to find what you're looking for, so you always use that to start. Now, once you can see the object, you stop using the coarse adjustment knob, and you move to the fine adjustment knob, and that's the little knob. Okay, on this one, again, it's the one that sits on top, kind of like a wedding cake. The little knob is the fine adjustment knob, and you're going to turn it, and it's going to focus the specimen. Okay, so you're going to use the big knob to find it, and then the little knob, fine adjustment, to focus it. All right, and you always use the little knob if you're using the big lenses. Once you move away from that low power objective, the small one, to medium or high power, either of the bigger lenses, you always use the little knob. So little knob, big lenses, big knob, little lens, always. But that's going to let you get it into a nice clear focus. Now, I pointed out to look at this that looks like a wedding cake. Some of our microscopes have two different knobs. The big knob, the coarse adjustment, is sitting separate from the little knob. So one will be kind of up a little bit, and one will be down a little bit, all right? But it doesn't matter where you find them. The larger of the knobs is going to be coarse adjustment. The smaller of the knobs is fine adjustment. All right, then you have the base, which is exactly what it sounds like. The bottom holds everything. All right, so those are the parts of the microscope. We are going to go to lab and get our hands on microscopes and use them, so you'll get even more familiar with all of these things.